Hello there, welcome back again. Today we are going to talk about early modern non-realism. Now, a number of the plays that we were just talking about in kind of the Sturmendrang and Romanticism, they were not classic, but they still kind of had a lot of the semblance of a realism, right? You still, in the plays, seem to have people acting, if not in a ways that show decorum or ways that we think they should, and there were fantastical elements, they still had kind of the veneer of real people, right, doing real things. Um, but we are going to instead talk about some things that came a little bit later that go a little bit further away from kind of neoclassicism and even kind of uh, uh, this is what kind of realism reacts against as well. So we're going to talk about this mostly with two plays, right? Wojtek and we're going to read a scene of Ubu Wa, or King Ubu, which it's something. So first we're going to talk about this fella, Georg Büchner, who lived from 1813 to 1837. You'll notice 1813 to 1837, right? He was only 24 when he passed away. This play that he wrote called Wojtek, it was unfinished and it was in fragments at his death. And so this play, right, there it was compiled from different scenes in a certain order, right? But it is not necessarily Buchner who put those solidly in that order, right? He could have changed them. He could have had another ending, who knows? But this play was unfinished. So it deals with this eponymous soldier, Wojciech, right? So Wojciech is in the army. He and his wife is there too. She's not a soldier like he is, but she's around, right? She's within the encampment. It doesn't have much to do with war itself, but he, as a character, is misused, dehumanized, and experimented on, right? There's a couple of things. He has to come and shave the captain um, every single day, right? And the captain just kind of orders him around doing, asking to do things for him that are kind of dehumanizing, right? He's also experimented on by essentially like the doctor or the scientist in the camp. Wojtek is forced to only eat peas um, and see what happens, right? Um, and so when he's only forced to eat peas, he starts going a little bit nuts, going a little bit more nuts, and having these apocalyptic visions, right? Um, in the play, going nuts, right? And he ends up kind of imagining that his wife was having an affair with the captain, right? Um, it turns out she kind of was, but his imagination runs away with him, and he takes this knife and ends up killing her. Right. So this play, it kind of asks, in a sense, are people responsible for their actions? Right. The Enlightenment, even like classical and then into the Enlightenment, thought that yes, people are absolutely responsible for their actions. But this thing thinks, well, in this certain circumstance, are we are we supposed to condemn Wojtek in our minds for killing this person, for killing his wife, when he has been mistreated so much and caused to not be in his right mind? Now, the next thing, the next fellow we're going to talk about is this lovely gentleman, Alfred Jarry, 1837 to 1907. Right, so he lived to be 34 years old. He wrote a play in 1896 called Ubu Wa, or King Ubu. It opened on December 10th in 1896, and it closed on December 10th of 1896 because there was a riot in the theater. Now, we'll get to why, but the dialogue in this particular play is rough, obscene. It is rife with slang, scatological language, whatever the opposite of heightened is, lowered, right? The very first line in the play, King Ubu says merdre. Now, if you know French, you know that that is very close to merde, which is shit in French. It's profanity. But Jari adds an extra R. The second R is not actually part of the word. So in English, it is often translated to shitter, right? Shittr, and to kind of keep that random extra R in it. He even debases the word shit. This particular play, it was based upon parody puppet skits Jari and his schoolboy friends made up about their physics teacher. So, oh goodness. Now, Jari, in his life, he was known to be a bit extra, right? He intentionally lived in a kind of a smaller room, like he took an owl around in places where he went. He was often drunk on absinthe. He painted himself green and rode through town on a bicycle. Like, yeah, he's quite a character. But in order to kind of understand what this play was about and why people were so incensed by it, we have to read one. We have to read a bit. So I am going to show you. So keep in mind, this is scene 2 of Ubuwa. Now, the written out dialogue and the sketches are all Jari's, right? In the play, he wrote kind of comic sketches of what's going on stage, like over the dialogue itself. So now keep in mind, this is scene 2. In scene 1, the main character is Père Ubu, right? Or like Mr. Ubu, right? His wife, Mère Ubu or Mrs. Ubu, right, is there too. But Père Ubu ends up becoming king by killing people, right? And then there's a ghost of the king, you know, a la Hamlet, right? Who comes out and says, "Avenge me," to this other person. But so scene 2 is in the great hall of the palace, right? Where Père Ubu is now the king, and he's gathered a whole bunch of people together. Now let's read this, right? So Père Ubu, the king, says, "Bring the nobles' coffer and the noble's hook and the noble's knife and the noble's book, and then bring the nobles." And then the nobles are pushed in. Then his wife, Mary Ubu, says, "For goodness sake, restrain yourself, Père Ubu. I have the honor to announce to you that in order to enrich the kingdom, I'm going to have all the nobles put to death and help myself to their property." The nobles say, "Horrors, help, people and soldiers. Bring the first noble and pass me the noble's hook. Those who are condemned to death will be passed down the trapdoor and fall into the basements of the pig pinching machine and the cash room, where they will be disembraned. Who are you, buffoon?" "Count of Vitispic." "What's your income?" $3,006,000. "Condemned." He grabs him with the hook and passes him into the pit. Then Mary, who says, "What beastly savagery." "Second noble, who are you?" The noble doesn't reply. "Are you going to answer, buffoon?" "The Grand Duke of Posen." "Grand Duke of Posen." "Excellent, excellent. That's all I want to know. Down the trapdoor." "Third noble, who are you?" "You got an ugly mug." "The Duke of Courland, of the towns of Riga, of Revel, and of Mitau." "Good, fine. Is that all?" "That's all." "Down the trapdoor then." "Fourth noble, who are you?" "Prince of Podolia." "What's your income?" "I am ruined." "For that ugly word, down the trapdoor with you." "Fifth noble, who are you?" "The Margrave of Thorn, Palatine of Pollock." "That's not much. Is that all?" "It was enough for me." "Oh, well, a little's better than nothing. Down the trapdoor. What are you muttering about, Mayor Ubu?" "You're too bloodthirsty, Père Ubu." "Huh, I'm getting rich. I'm going to have my list of my property read. Clerk, read my list of my property." And the clerk says, "County of Sardomir." And he responds, "Begin with the princedom, stupid ass." Okay. "Princedom of Podolia, Grand Duchy of Posen, Duchy of Courland, County of Sandomir, County of Vitispic, Palatine of Pollock, Margravate of Thorn." "Then what?" "That's all." "What, is that all?" "Oh, well then, come on, nobles, and as I intend to continue enriching myself, I shall have all the nobles executed and thus get a hold of all the vacant properties. Come on, pass the nobles through the trapdoor." The nobles are shoved through the trapdoor. "Hurry up, quicker. I want to make some laws now." And people say, "That'll be something. First, I shall reform the law, after which we shall proceed to finance." The magistrates say, "We are opposed to all change." He says, "Shitter. Firstly, magistrates won't be paid anymore. And what shall we live on? We are poor. You can have the fines that you impose and the property of the people who are condemned to death." And they say, hopefully with these little caricatures, "Horrors, infamy, shame, indignity. We object to passing judgment under such conditions." He says, "All the magistrates down the trapdoor." They struggle in vain. And then Mary Ubu says, "Here, what are you doing, Père Ubu? Who will administer justice now?" "Huh? I shall. You'll see how it'll work. How well it'll work." "Yes, that'll be a fine mess." "Look, shut up, buffoonist. And now, gentlemen, we shall proceed to finance." The financiers say, "There's nothing to change." He says, but I'm going to change everything. In the first place, I intend to keep half the taxes for myself. You say, what do you think of that? He says, gentlemen, we shall institute a tax of 10% on property, another on commerce and industry, and a third on marriages, and a fourth on deaths, each of 15 francs. But it's idiotic, Pere Ubu. It's absurd. You can't make head or tail of it. What do you think I am? Down the trap door with the financiers. The financiers are pushed in. But look, Pere Ubu, says his wife, what sort of a king do you think you are? You'll kill everyone. He says, oh, shitter. No more law, no more finance. Don't be afraid, my sweet child. I'll go myself from village to village and collect the taxes. So that is something, right? So this particular play, Ubu Wa, it takes place in Poland, that is to say nowhere, right? That's in Ajari's kind of stage directions. He gave 6 notes: that there is a mask for King Ubu, for Ubu Wa, a cardboard horse's head for Pere Ubu that could be worn during the equestrian scenes. So when he's riding a horse, he just has a horse's head on. There's a single cassette consisting of a plain black backdrop with placards informing the audience of the scene, right? So it'd be like, hey, this is scene 2, this is this scene. No crowds, right? One person represents an army. So when in this play, Pere Ubu goes to war, he's just fighting one guy. Okay? He says that there should be an unspecified voice or accent for Pere Ubu. And here, hold on just a second. I'll make this bigger. An unspecified voice or accent for Pere Ubu, and costumes that don't give impressions of any location, but they should be modern and dirty, right? Okay, so all of this put together, it seems to us, you know, in response to, you know, Shakespeare and Moliere and even like Goethe, this play seems crass and childish and profane and obscene. And why in the world would anyone like this? Why would they put this up on stage, right? A lot of reactions that most of the audience thought of too, right? But it is important. It is an important play. Because, you know, one, it's sometimes fun to read because it's just the crazy absurdity of it. But absurdity is maybe the point, right? It is not kind of taking a high-minded critique of high society and those in power. It is just slandering them, right? And not even arguing against them, but just making fun of them, which is a different sort of kind of political statement, honestly. So this is perhaps a symbolist play. Some people thought that this is kind of proto-symbolist. Now, symbolism was a kind of late 19th, early 20th century artistic movement as well, that we'll get into a little bit later. But this is Ubu Wa, King Ubu. Thank you all very much again. Next up, I think we're going to talk about realism. I'll have to double check that, but I hope you have a good day. Cheers.